Hello. Welcome to Cut and Uncut with Daphne and Bonnie Violet. My name is Daphne and I'm Cut.
And I'm Bonnie Violet and I'm Uncut. Here we talk about all things trans.
And then some.
And in this episode, per your request, well, some of your requests, we're going to be responding
and we listen
to some of you, all right? Chapter 1 of REN. And as a bonus episode, we are going to do Chinchilla's newest 1-5. That one's for you specifically, Daphne.
Yeah, because you know I love me some chinchilla. We also want to give a big shout out and a huge thank you to our Patreon members, Skylar Bean in our tier trade, and our free members, Jacob Blankenship, Elizabeth, Danielle Loyal, Bertha D, Carrie Beersley, Eclectic Fandom, and our newest member, drum roll please, Alexi Siltala. Thank you for joining us, and hugs and kisses. And happy Memorial Day.
Yes, welcome to our Patreon. And be sure to watch us on YouTube. Join us on that Patreon I just mentioned. Follow us on TikTok and get that merch. Yes, happy Memorial Day to folks. I think we'll either get, I feel like we could either get a lot more people or like no people.
Yeah, everybody's barbecuing and living in sin.
It's so nice here. I want to be like out in the park and doing all that stuff, but I'm here with you.
I thank you because I wasn't doing anything today. I stayed in and I binge watched the Planet of the Apes because I'm going to go see the movie, the newest one. And then I fell in love with the newest show, Mary and George. I've been starting on that now. So
what's that?
Mary and George.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a king in England who falls for a boy and is hell for this boy to get this king's attention. So the mother is plotting tooth and nail to get him and the king together. So far, I think I'm on episode 4, and it is pure sex, girl.
Oh, wow.
More sex than you can imagine.
We have to check it out. That reminds me, there was one person in because we did a poll, folks, and that's kind of how we came up with today's. We can't pick them all. So what we landed on, but somebody had made a comment that made me think of you, Daphne. There was one of the ones in the poll was, I think someone in the past had mentioned that REN had done like a gay pride festival in Brighton.
Oh, so you thought of me?
No, I thought, oh, Pride is coming up. That might be kind of a fun one to do. So I threw it in the poll, and then there was one person in the comments said, ooh, I think I know that one. And if that's the one that they're all in underwear, you just sign me up for that one. And then I thought, oh, Daphne might be up for that one.
Yeah. And thank you for thinking of me. And that was definitely coming in on Pride. So duly noted. Write that down, Bonnie.
Yeah. Wrote down. All right. Well, so we mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but the first thing that we're going to do tonight is we're going to do chapter 1 of REN. And so in the comments, folks might have seen that there was some question about whether or not we should react to these particular chapters or things, because it's not REN singing, but it's actually him kind of, I would say in some ways, almost given a testimonial, kind of like what I talked with you about earlier, Daphne. I kind of feel like it's like, because you and I are in recovery, and oftentimes a big part of being in recovery is we share our experience, strength, and hope, which is a way that we share our story around recovery from drugs and alcohol, how things were, how they are now, all that sort of stuff. And so I gathered from what folks were talking about these chapters that it's something along those lines of getting more of the story behind REN, and some other things that I think he was just really wanting to get off his chest. So in a lot of ways, I thought that this would be, that was just a glitch. You all blinked at the same time. But I kind of felt like this kind of got into maybe the vibe of when we originally got started with this as a podcast, before we started doing the reactions. And so, I don't know, we'll check it out. And we'll just try to, respond as we feel so inclined, I guess. So if you can just you can try to let me know too, if you think we should stop or you start to say something, and we'll just kind of go from there. And for folks who are watching us, feel free to let us know your thoughts and questions or whatever's going on in your head that you want to share with us in the comments as we go through this, whether you're watching us live or you're catching us at a later time. All right.
So let me stop you right there, Bonnie, because you said that this is us. REN Chapter 8 is basically, just to summarize, we're going to go through how REN got to where he is now through his experience, strength, and hope in certain ways. So my question to you is, because a lot of our viewers have been giving us notes, tips on who he is and, his story. And I'm afraid that this is going to taint all the experience that we've been getting from our readers, because I'm going to really know who REN is and really try to move to London. Is that what you're trying to say? Or
right.
wherever he is?
Yeah, no, I think it's just going to give us a little bit more of an insight beyond what the music can tell us. Okay. So I do think it'll be quite interesting. And I think just like when we listen to other people who give a lead in a meeting or share their story, I think it's totally appropriate for us to kind of, respond and think like, oh, this reminds me of this, or, that sort of stuff. And so we're just going to play it by ear and see how it goes. This is chapter 1, and I believe there's like up to 8 or so. So this is really just the beginning. Again, I have not watched anything about these, so I don't know. But here we go.
Hello, everyone. This is the first time I've done something like this before. I wanted to write it down because there's a lot and I didn't want to miss anything. And some parts of this might be a little bit uncomfortable to listen to, but I wanted to stay as true as possible to the story, not miss anything, for the sake of people who might be going through something similar, or for the sake of people who don't, but want to help understand a little bit more. Yeah. I promise that everything in this story is 100% true. Nothing is exaggerated for dramatic effect. Some names I don't mention and some details I don't go too far into or downplay them for the sake of the people around me. Timelines might occasionally be a little bit off, but that's just because I've had to write everything from memory from a time that was quite hazy. I asked before embarking on this journey with me that you all respect the privacy of myself and the people around me. You might be compelled to reach out to some of the people that I mention, cast judgment, praise them, criticize them, and I ask you kindly not to. It's my choice to be in the public eye, and it's mine alone. This is the first time my story is on the public record in a concise way. Being in the public eye is strange. The more that I give to you, the less that I get to keep for myself. I don't find the experience of sharing particularly enjoyable. I don't so much like the questions that follow. And I'm not a medical expert, so I don't like to be seen as somebody with all the answers, because I don't have them. And because of the empathy that I feel, I'm compelled to try and help as many people as possible. But the last time I opened myself up to this on a one-on-one basis, I was surrounded by a lot of death. And there simply weren't enough hours in the day. So I ask you, if you need support, please reach out to a professional or use my music as your companion. I share my story in hopes that somebody who needs it finds it, that it provides hope, that it might ease the suffering for the people like me. I like my solitude, so I ask that anyone who respects the work I make and respects my contribution to the world to respect my solitude. A lot happened in my teenage years, and I didn't live the most normal of lives, but I'll save that story for another time. The important thing to contextualize this story is that I was full of life. I was full of a burning desire to change the world. The flaws in how we interact seemed obvious to me. I believed in people's power to change the unnecessary suffering we inflict upon ourselves. I was also enamored with music. Music is the closest thing to God that I have. It's a gateway to the unexplainable, and it's a way of communicating the inexpressible. There's just one moment that I want to share with you from the years before I got sick. I was 17, and I felt indestructible. I'm not sure why, but my whole life I had this feeling inside myself that I was meant to do something important, not for myself, not for praise, not for personal gain, but something that would change the world for the better. It's hard to describe it without coming across like an egomaniac or having some sort of God complex, but I felt like I had some sort of divine purpose. And I remember feeling this so strongly that one afternoon after school, I stood in the center of my bedroom and I spoke loud into an empty void. I said that I would single-handedly take on and defeat the forces of evil, and I welcomed them to try their best. Throughout the years, that memory stuck with me, taunting me some.
Do you recognize that lyric? It's from REN, which was our first introduction to REN. Remember when he said he shouted out into the void? Somebody has joined us, so let's say hello. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
It's okay that you're late. We're glad that you're here with us. We're kind of just getting started, so you haven't missed too much. Any thoughts so far?
Yeah. How do I even unpack this? You know, he said so much and it was very powerful. And one moment I felt like my spirit inside kind of giggle. And when I say giggle, because it resonated. I know what it's like to want to hold on to that only part of you that you don't want to share with the world. But at the same time, Bonnie, some people are just destined to know that they have a gift. You know, my aunt once told me, you never know when God's going to call you. You know, people just don't choose to do the things that they do. It's something that they're divinely, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Divinely pathed to. So yeah, I can relate to a lot. How about yourself?
Yeah. I feel like that's, I think some of us are created more so for that than others, but I know like a big part of my healing process and our healing process is like to be able to share what we've gone through, not in the sense of like being a victim or to like go through this stuff, because it does take a lot of emotional labor and it's hard to go back to some of those things. It can be traumatic. It can bring up all these sorts of different feelings. However, when we're able to talk about these things and people are able to take something positive from it, then that can kind of turn in that negative thing into a positive. It can make it feel like that thing that's happened to you happened for a reason. Not that I don't believe that things happen to us like on purpose so that we learn something, but I do think things happen to us, and because they happen to us, they can fold in a way in which we can learn from it and like help others. You know what I mean? So I don't think that he got sick because that was his purpose.
Yeah.
I think that getting sick was part of his life, and he's been able to turn that into his purpose of being part.
Would you say it was kind of like it was a way for him to truly heal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Caterpillar coming out of a, cocoon into this, beautiful butterfly. Because from what I'm hearing is that you got to go through the dark to get to the light. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's necessarily always the truth. Do you think? I mean,
I think that's often the journey. I don't know that that's the way things have to go, but you see it that way over and over. And oftentimes that's how I've experienced it. You know, in the beginning, he was talking a lot about like, this is something I really wanted to keep for me, because he does put so much out there. And I really related to that as well as like somebody who's been open about first my HIV status, and then like as a queer person, and then as a person in recovery. A big part of being in that community is our stories and our experiences, and really identifying with those aspects of ourselves at times, maybe a little more than what's ideal, but it is important, I think, at those times in our lives. And I remember as I started my transition, I was really protective of that particular experience of myself, because I didn't necessarily I just wanted to hold it closer to me. I wasn't ready to share it with other people more than I had to, because it just happens just because people see you and they're like, oh, there's a trans person. So it's not something you can really hide in that aspect. But as far as like the nitty gritty stuff, that stuff is more private, and has taken me some time to begin to feel willing to like open up.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he speaks on the music, because throughout my life, I had to go inside and listen to the music to heal. And I know a lot of our viewers say that REN has helped them through a lot of dark times. His music inspires them. And, I believe it was Carrie or was it Deanna that says she likes to listen to it as she's going through, driving. Oh my God. Look who the cat drug in. Hi, Carrie.
Okay. Oh, did we freeze?
You froze. I'm still popping, baby.
Do this again. I think this is where I have to shut things down on my end. So, hold on, Kiki.
Okay, I want to talk to Carrie.
Yes.
Hey, Carrie, girl, where you been, girl? Happy Memorial Day. It's so good to hear from you. I'm so glad you're doing well. Yeah, so we were just discussing chapter 1 of REN's chapter. I think there's 8 chapters here, and we're just getting into it, Carrie. So you haven't really missed a lot of it. We're just getting into how he spoke about his journey so far. You know, he's really talking about his childhood before that, and how he was inspired. He just knew he was destined for greatness, and a lot of us can understand when you have that call and you need to be ready for it. And I don't know. I think I'm looking forward to hearing more of what he has to say. I'm just holding on till Bonnie gets here. But so far, I'm inspired. I'm kind of sad at the same time because it really shows his vulnerability, and I don't want to cry because I put all this makeup on. So but let me know what you guys think in the comments. So far we spoke about a little bit about before he got sick. So that's where we are. We were saying how the music inspired him, or his music inspires him. Am I right, Bonnie?
Yes, that's exactly it. So sorry about that. I don't know why the computer decides to do that every now and again. But we should be able to get started now. I think we were just a little ways in.
I wish that I could say I can
We weren't
only
there.
do it so much.
Just a little sneak
With
peek.
Babushka.
I know, right? Just a little sneak peek. And then I don't know. Did you see all? So Keith joined us.
Hey, Keith. Hello. Good eye, Mike. Good on you.
And then I don't know if you saw all these. Thanks for saying we're beautiful. Glad to catch one of these. So did you see all these?
No, I didn't see what Kelly. How you gonna hide what Kelly said? Let me read what Kelly said. Kelly said, "I really like you too. I'm just a straight white woman." Well, thank God for that, Kelly. We need more straight white women from a small town in Iowa, so I don't see a lot of diversity. I just want to say I appreciate you both and hearing your stories. Thank you so much, Kelly. You're more than welcome to be here.
I always say
we love everybody.
Iowa, Idaho, and Ohio always get confused. So I always say I live where Iowa has the D. So in Idaho. Anywho, Cerulean, I don't know if I recall meeting you before. Thank you. So glad that you found us. Glad you could
Hi, Cerulean.
On here. And then, Carrie's up there.
Miss Beardsley.
And I think we're all caught up. All right. And then now I just got to find where we were. Let's see.
It's my choice to be in the public eye, and it's mine alone.
A little further. Huh?
This is the for the people like me. I like my solitude. There's just one moment I want to share with you from the years before I got sick. I was 17 and I felt indestructible. I'm not sure why, but my whole life I had this feeling inside myself that I was meant to do something important, not for myself, not for praise, not for personal gain, but something that would change the world for the better. It's hard to describe it without coming across like an egomaniac or having some sort of God complex, but I felt like I had some sort of divine purpose. And I remember feeling this so strongly that one afternoon after school, I stood in the center of my bedroom and I spoke loud into an empty void. I said that I would single-handedly take on and defeat the forces of evil, and I welcomed them to try their best. Throughout the years, that memory stuck with me, taunting me sometimes. Flash forward to 2019. I remember the first day I knew something was wrong very well. I woke up in an unfamiliar room in Cardiff, feeling like a raven had perched itself upon my heart. Every time my heart beat, it's like some part of me was aware of the foreboding death sentence that was to come. Some sort of primal instinctive dread. Everything felt wrong, and I felt prosthetic, like I could tear my own skin off and observe though I was watching passively from another room. The night before, I'd been in Cardiff visiting friends in university. It was the end of summer, we'd gone out to a few bars. I wasn't really enjoying myself. That year I'd been struggling with social anxiety, perhaps from years of abusing my brain with a whole pick and mix and selection of party drugs. Engaging with society felt like stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champion. Every single fucking question felt like an oncoming haymaker I had to socially navigate because of my very limited toolkit of charisma at the time. I don't know why I cared about being liked so much, but the more I cared, the less equipped I became to have a simple human conversation. I used to deal with this by getting fucking hammered. That night was no exception. I got smashed, lost my phone, and woke up in a strange apartment. In the bed opposite mine was a snoring rugby player and his girlfriend. Everything just seemed off, and it wasn't a hangover. My first thought was I'd been spiked. I quietly gathered all my belongings and left before anyone could wake up and punch me with a conversation. I wandered around a grey Cardiff in a haze, feeling like I've just been rigged up to an IV bag full of ketamine and cyanide, and the whole world just seemed off, like I was looking at it through a tunnel. A heavy feeling of fear clung around me like a straitjacket. The only comforting thought was that with enough time, rest and water, it would pass. But it didn't. For 8 long years, it didn't. And this is my story of an 8-year-long nightmare.
One thing I wanted to say before we get going too far was that in the beginning, he had mentioned, talking about, I related to when he said, he yelled out to the earth or like whatever yelled at, like kind of this idea, like, give it to me or bring it on, or like, I'll take you on, or I kind of feel that way. Sometimes it's like with prayer or, however way you want to say it, but kind of putting out into the world what it is that you want or you want to learn or what you want to experience. Because sometimes the journey to get there is like, it's crushing. It's soul crushing in order to get there.
I can relate to a lot of what he just said. There's a song that reminds me of what he's saying, and it's from Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly with his song. But in this fact, I mean, there's so many things, from the waking up next to his rugby, getting sloshed, and, just to have that anxiety with society or social engagement. I had to drink to get comfortable in my skin with being trans, and the uncomfortable questions. Are you a boy or a girl? Do you do this or do you do that? Waking up the next day wondering where my panties are and who's this guy? You know what I mean? And where's my money? No, just kidding.
Right.
But I can totally relate to this. It's the drugs, all of it. All I did, all of that, just to not even be comfortable in my own skin, to try to find myself. In reality, I didn't need any of it for me.
Well, it's what you needed at the time, maybe.
It's what I needed at the time.
Like,
you're absolutely right.
We know it's not what we need today, but sometimes, I don't know. I'm grateful for the time that I had with substances, because I do think they gave me life when I wasn't able to get it anywhere else. And I often say it softened the blow of life for me so that I could exist and stay alive and want to be alive. But one of the things that I was going to say too, that I relate to, but like my drug use and alcohol use actually came after my diagnosis with HIV, which is often how I feel connected to REN's, some of REN's experiences. Just getting, HIV diagnosis in the late 90s was like, death sentence. It's a chronic illness, all these sorts of things. But I really connect to that. And so I guess the difference is my substance use really kicked off after my diagnosis. And then Kelly shared that she's a former addict, so I get it. Been clean since 2010. Yay, congrats.
Keep going, Kelly. Keep going, girl. That's what we're talking about.
That's awesome. We don't
like sharing that.
We're so lucky to be sober, because so many of us just don't make it out alive,
I love his passion to bring people together and find goodness. That is a keynote for me here.
Agreed. All right, let's get going.
I returned back to my dad's home. He was living with his partner at the time. It wasn't my home, so I already felt uncomfortable and out of place. These unusual symptoms persisted. I figured I'd caught some sort of virus and I'd get better with time. But by the end of the week, things were a lot worse. I took myself to the doctor and he said he thought it sounded viral, that if I went home and got enough rest, it would eventually pass. And it didn't. For 8 years, it didn't. I returned for my second year of university. My brain was full of fog and my body felt poisoned. There were intermittent days where I felt like a hollow suit of skin. I'd sit in lectures unable to focus and was devoid of any sort of personality. I'd be able to have basic conversations, yeses and nos, but I was stripped of the ability to think spontaneously. It's like my body was taking up so much processing power being sick that I could not have original or spontaneous thought. The most peculiar thing about this was there was a me that was aware that this was all happening and was observing it from outside of myself, locked out, screaming silently, banging on the walls of my mind to be let in, and never successfully. And nonetheless, there I was, like a ghost haunting myself. My usual routine was getting home, running a shower and curling up into a ball to cry underneath the running water, not understanding what was going on. I brought myself to the doctors numerous times during this period, requesting every blood test they'd let me have, often being dismissed and told things like stress from university can cause strange symptoms. But how come no one I knew in university could relate to this? Eventually, I was put on a 6-month-long waiting list to see a mental health specialist who did a short 1-page questionnaire and wrongly diagnosed me as hypercycling bipolar and put me on a course of citalopram. After a few weeks, it stole my ability to sleep. I was told to stick it out and it would level out and eventually I'd feel more like myself. I stuck it out and I got worse, and I pulled myself off it after 2 weeks in a row of sleepless nights and insomnia.
Can you recall a time when you felt like you were watching yourself from outside of yourself? You know, like he was talking about?
Well, my near-death experience after my surgery. That was kind of the end and the beginning for me. I was due to leave from reassignment, and I had done everything right, and I went to go get in the shower, and I died. And I remember just this darkness, and I could just remember telling myself, I'm done. And that was just it. It just, there was none of this. There was no me. There was no physical. It was just consciousness. And I was just done. And then there was just this little tiny pin of light that brought me back. And I just knew I was at peace and that I didn't have to go through the rat race anymore. So that's my experience of what he was trying to say.
Yeah, I'd never heard you say that. Share that.
I don't really talk about it. Like he says, this is the part of us that we keep to ourselves. So yeah, it was pretty bad. It was bad, but I part of me had died, and whoever woke up, I don't know who or what happened, but I know what it's like to be done and tired and not, be so thankful that it's over.
Yeah. Well, that's like so many things happening at once, because in some ways doing your surgery and stuff is a letting go and a dying of like some other parts, but to actually then also have the physical aspects.
Everything was gone. There was no feeling of anything, just pure consciousness. And thank you, Carrie. William shares. What does William say?
Occasional issues with psychosis has affected me where I'm watching myself from the outside when the CPTSD kicks in with flashbacks.
Wow, William.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And Carrie says, I'm not sober as much as I want to be. I've been addicted to THC for 20 years.
Thank you for sharing that, Carrie.
Yeah, sobriety's, it's a hard thing. And it's not for everybody. I think it's such a personal thing, and we can only know if it's not working for us or if it's causing more harm than it is good. But I think sometimes we need those sorts of things in order to get through life. And I think some people go and get antidepressants, and they have access to medical care. And some of us have had to at times kind of take it into our own hands and figure out our own ways of trying to medicate ourselves in order to really like exist and be able to do life. Yeah.
And Cerulean says, as a parent to a trans teenage daughter, it was super refreshing to see you two pop up amongst the other REN reactors I watch. Thank you for sharing your experiences and perspectives. Thank you, Cerulean. We thank you, and God bless your trans teenage daughter. We know, we've been there, and we know what that's like. And to have you as a parent be supportive, thank you. Sincerely.
Yeah, I'm sure it means the world to them. Even if they're like a teenager and they're like, ugh, I hate my parents. I hate my parents. Exactly right.
I hate the hair.
Yes, having parents.
Lopsided camera.
Having parents affirm your trans identity is so powerful, because so much of the world does not understand us and does not even want to try. And so when our parents can be there I know for me, when my parents have been there in my life through difficult things, I could care less what the rest of the world is saying. But when they do feel challenged by me, it definitely makes it a little bit harder to be in the world.
Does anybody know about REN's parents? Does he really share anything about his background and with his parents? Carrie says, yes, I'm so glad you two have more people showing up on live. Yes, Carrie, but I'm glad you're
there first. Yeah, the The only thing I know about that he's spoken about his parents is just in the song Power, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He talks about, hearing love die through the walls. Do you remember that? I remember that lyric, but basically it sounded like his parents got a divorce while he was sick, while he was ill. That was my understanding, but that's about all I know as far as the, family dynamics go.
Okay. You want to keep going?
Yeah, there's one more thing.
William says, refreshing indeed, Cerulean. Too many people in the world are quick to judge others, and how. And that's why we're here. It took a lot for me, and Bonnie will tell you, it took a lot for me to get up here and talk about me and share my story because, when you are, what's the word? You are, help me, Bonnie. When they make you focus on something, you shouldn't tell nobody this and you shouldn't tell nobody that. That's not how I want to live my life. I have to be comfortable in my own skin and I have to be proud of who I am. And when you have people don't support you and want you to hide who you are, you're hiding your greatness. And it just doesn't even come with just your sexuality. It dampers a lot of spirit in you.
Yeah. And I think he spoke to that a lot in the beginning when he said, I'm sharing this for me. And this is my story from my perspective. It's not my family's. It's not my friends. Don't reach out to them. Don't talk to them. You know what I mean? This is just about me and where I'm at. And I'm sharing because it's, because I need to. Yes. Carrie says that his dad is an amazing musician and his mom was a singer.
Okay.
Cerulean says he doesn't talk about his family much, but every now and again, he mentions them in these chapters. So it sounds like we'll get to know a little bit more about them. Courage comes in many forms. Speaking honestly is a big one. Yes, William Keith, some Australian wisdom there. Love you too, Christina.
Hi, Christina. We love you too.
And here we go.
There's something pretty peculiar about being told you're in some sort of spectrum of madness, even if you suspect that you're mad. Your diagnosis finds a way to claw itself into your identity, even if it doesn't belong to you. Ever since I was a child, I'd always be asking what and why and how things worked. I couldn't really accept things as they were without knowing how. I carried into my adult years, and so as the bipolar hammer crashed and sentenced itself into my reality, I began searching online for behaviours associated with it, people's first-hand experiences, what it felt like to be manic. In these earlier days of my illness, the symptoms would fluctuate in severity day by day. Some days I'd be in the thick, tired fog, and other days they'd be more merciful. I began to associate the days of not suffering as mania and would act more erratically on the days that my symptoms were less bothersome. I did things like climbing out of windows of a 6-story student accommodation or get so drunk I'd wake up outside of the university campus lawn. But it wasn't mania. I just wasn't hurting. I spent one day a week with my therapist, who was teaching me cognitive behavioural therapy. The issue was, mentally reframing unexplainable symptoms caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. I was told my anxiety or depression was causing my symptoms, but in reality it was my symptoms which were making me anxious and depressed. So I was in some sort of inescapable bind. I'd devotedly work on my mental health, following every new tool for coping to the letter, only to have my symptoms get worse, which made me frustrated, raise the intensity of my treatment, only to get even more frustrated as my body seemed to deteriorate. After 6 months, I told my mum I'd happily saw off my own leg with a blunt knife if it meant my symptoms would vanish, and I meant it. I told her if I had to live with this strange feeling for one more year, I'd kill myself, and I meant that too. But something happened that winter which showed me firsthand the horrors and the fallout from suicide.
Did the cognitive dissonance jumps out to me too. I think that's one of those big words that might seem like, what is that? But it's like, for me, there's been plenty of times where it's like, I feel like sometimes it's that way with behavior sometimes, or when you find yourself doing something that seems contrary to what you want to do. I mean, it's just like that difference, between what's happening and what's going on in your mind, or I don't know. It's just,
is this happening or isn't this happening? Kind of a situation. I struggled with the male and female thing for a long time for me. So in my respect, I think that was the cognitive dissonance to me. And then I just realized I'm just me. I don't have to pick a side. I can just be comfortable in my own skin and wear sweatpants one day and a skirt the next day and be okay with being Daphne. So I
Mhm.
can relate, you know. The suicide and the sawing off the leg, that hurts. That hurts me deeply to hear someone even share that, because I know it's real. I know that people are out here hurting and we can't do anything. Or it's just, you want to hug them. Yeah, I just want to reach out and give Ren a big hug, you know?
Indeed. Well, and to think that he's gotten through that as well. I said a similar thing to my mother, actually, when I was getting off of meth. I had been living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And when I decided to stop using meth, I wanted to do it on my own, but my mom was like, come home. And so I went home to my little hometown of 3,000 people and moved into the camp trailer in the backyard. And I got off of crystal meth. And I remember it just being in all these emotions from, because violence and trauma is what triggered my substance use or my meth use. And so all that sort of trauma and everything was coming back as far as getting out of the drugs. And I remember just crying and being upset with my mom and just telling her I wished I would die. And she was just like, she was like, no, like my mom is never this way, but she's like, no. She's like, when you told me you were queer and you had HIV and you were going to die, then we were like, okay, fine, go off in the world, do what you have to do. But you're not fucking dead. So
I love that.
head out of your ass and
that.
like live your fucking life. And I was just like, damn. I was also like, who's like, it's such a, like, that's a terrible, like in retrospect, I can understand that I said it, but in retrospect, that's a horrible thing to say to your mother of all people. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't imagine being a mother hearing that from my child. Kelly says that Bonnie, meth was my drug of choice as well. IV user. I'm so freaking thankful I clawed my way out of that hell. I feel so bad for those still suffering.
Yes.
I put my parents through hell. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. And it doesn't take but 5 minutes. I need everybody to do this. Tell your parents that you are grateful.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because if it wasn't for Miss Mary cussing me out and putting me through it, saying, well, as long as you don't go out here, because when I told her that I wanted to be trans, she was like, well, you're not going to go out and wear people's skin, are you? And this is what she thought of as, Silence of the Lambs. That's where her idea of being trans was, but with education and understanding and love and compassion. And her words were, I'm going to mourn my son, but I'm going to welcome a daughter. So I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here for you. Whatever makes you happy makes me happy. And she still says that to this day.
Yeah. And Kelly says, I try my best to show my mom how thankful I am for her never giving up on me.
Amen. I love that.
Yep.
Okay, Bonnie, we pushing time. We got 2 more videos, right? We got to come through.
Well, yes, but yes. Here we go.
Winter, it showed me firsthand the horrors and the fallout from suicide. I met Joe when I was 9 years old. I remember the first time clearly. I was standing in his living room and he turned to me and he was like, watch this. Then he proceeded to climb on top of his sofa and did a front flip onto a stone living room floor. He landed on his back and lay motionless for a few seconds before grinning, getting up, and then doing it all over again. We grew up terrorising the streets of the small village we grew up in, playing knock door run or breaking into people's gardens to play on their trampolines. We stayed friends throughout high school, going through various phases together. Joe was comedian of the group. I remember countless mornings after messy all-nighters, Joe would be cracking endless jokes like a professional stand-up routine, and we'd all be in tears laughing. When I started writing my first songs, Joe and Sega were the first people who always knew every word, and they would sing along at the top of their lungs. They gave me a lot of self-belief, and they helped me build the foundation of what I do today, and I owe them a lot for that. That Christmas, I came back home to Wales from university. On Christmas Eve, me and Joe were sat in a pub, and he turned to me, and he told me that he'd fantasized about walking into the sea until he was totally submerged. He had a pretty morbid sense of humour, so I didn't really take him as seriously as I should have. 2 days later, it's 3 a.m, and I get a phone call. It's my friend Ella. She tells me that Joe is on the bridge by my house. He was drunk, he'd called her up, and he told her he was going to jump. I was still half asleep. I fumbled, pulling on whatever clothes I could that were near, and I walked out of the front door, and the winter air stung my face, and it woke me up. Adrenaline kicked in, and I started sprinting towards the bridge. It was about a 5-minute walk, a 2.5-minute sprint. As I was running, I dialed Joe's number, and I get a busy tone, and I felt relief because it meant he was still alive. I kept hitting redial as I ran, and as I got about halfway to the bridge, the busy tone changes. I get an automated voice note saying the number's out of service, and my heart sunk. I got to the suspension bridge that connects Anglesey to the mainland, and it usually looks very beautiful. I sprint up and down the bridge yelling Joe's name, and there's silence, and it's deafening. And I peer over the bridge into the blackness, and the bridge sits about 100 feet above the water. Hitting cold water at that height is like smashing into concrete. And the waters are notoriously dangerous because of the cross current. I hear nothing, no sounds, nothing. I run up and down the bridge about 2 times before I spot a figure at the end of it, and my heart jumps into my throat, and I run towards the figure, and it's my friend Ricky who's had the same call, and we both run around up and down the bridge and around the surrounding area looking for Joe. More of his friends eventually arrive, and there's nothing. I was about a minute too late.
Take your time, right?
We spent the next week walking up and down beaches with flashlights. And when it's that dark, every other large rock starts to look like a washed up body. We plastered all the neighbouring towns in missing posters, contacting whoever we could, someone who might know something. We checked bank records to see if any money had been withdrawn since he went missing. There was CCTV footage of him walking onto the bridge, but there wasn't any of him coming off. But there were dead zones in the footage, so there was still a small chance he could be alive. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night, pretty determined that we'd still find him. For about 10 days we had nothing, and then suddenly a call comes through while we're all at my friend Miles's house having food. It's the police. A body had been found in the water by the bridge. We piled into my friend's car. I remember being in the back seat in floods of tears, repetitively punching the back of the passenger seat as we drove to the scene. As we pull up, I saw a lifeless body being zipped up into a green bag near a parked ambulance. Its skin was bloated by the seawater, and it wasn't Joe. Someone else decided to jump that day. Joe was never found. It's difficult to truly let go when you can't say goodbye. For months following, I held on to this fantasy that we'd get a call that he'd run away to some European town, and he was happy and he was healthy. But that call never came. The time during his inquest was also around the time I was struggling with the side effects of a new antidepressant. I remember sitting in the courtroom feeling like I was listening to the whole thing deep underwater. The judge felt the circumstances surrounding Joe's death didn't mean The judge felt that the circumstances surrounding Joe's death meant that the verdict was left open. It kind of stung even more to not have an official ruling of suicide. I remember going to visit his mum not long after and witnessing the aftermath of a mother grieving for her baby boy. The silence of his father, the tears of his mother. I decided that day that I'd have to wait until my illness killed me because I couldn't do it by choice. I couldn't put my family through that. Over the next 10 years, I returned to my hometown, only a handful of times following Joe's death. My last visit was in the summer of last year. I reconnected with Joe's parents and showed them a song that I'd written, simply entitled For Joe. We cried together, reminisced together, joked, and I'm proud to say that I gave Joe's mum enough money to afford a caravan she told me she'd been saving up for. That felt pretty good. We'd also do a fundraiser for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who were integral for searching for Joe during that time, and we raised a pretty good amount of money too. Being able to give back in whatever small way I could felt good, and it felt right for all the years Joe had made us all laugh till it hurt. He was a solid person, just a little lost, as we all are sometimes. And I miss him. Life was about to take an even more unusual turn, and I was about to meet the first angel of this story. So stay tuned for that.
Wow. Kelly said that Joe saved Ren's life.
Whoa.
It's wild. There's so many layers. I had my ex Steven, when he passed his suicide, he was on the phone with his mother on the top of a building in LA, and like that's how he chose to go or whatever. And it's just like, suicide is so hard. It used to be a lot harder for me when I was younger, but now I just see it as a way that people die. It's a way that we die. It's a way that life ends. Sometimes it's cancer, sometimes it's a car, sometimes it's old age, you know, sometimes it's suicide. I think I don't know, I found it important to just realize that it's just something that happens. Just like we can feel like we weren't there to help the person through the cancer, or we couldn't stop, maybe we were driving the car, or, you know, like all these sorts of things, like in a lot of these situations we're powerless over it, and there's really nothing that we can do, and that's a hard thing to accept. Not to diminish his experience with this or anybody else's, because I think suicide does add that extra layer that makes it, I think, a little bit more challenging to live with.
Yeah, I had a guy that I was madly in love with. His name was Dane, and I just loved Dane. He was the most beautiful, kind-hearted, sweetest guy I could ever meet, who just loved me for me, but as a friend. You know, he just didn't see me in that sexual way that I saw him. And I want, you know how when you want someone so bad and the rejection is there, but they're still so good to you, you know, and Dane struggled with depression, and I struggled with alcoholism, and I was angry and resentful, and I said some nasty things to him, and he said some nasty things to me. And I left. I moved from where he was, and his mom called me and told me that he had killed himself in her garage, and it just broke my heart. And I have a plant named Dane, you know, because, you know, it's just, it's such a hard thing. It's just, you know, we don't know, you know, nobody's, when anyone's time is, or how truly hurt someone is, you know. That's why I try to be as kind and I wouldn't say, I've learned not to say treat people the way I want to be treated, but treat people the way they want to be treated.
Yes.
You know, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said by me? You know?
Yeah.
And all it takes, and I'm going to put this to New York, I'm going to put this to Chicago. All it takes, or anybody with any biases, all it takes is just to say hello to make somebody's day.
Yeah.
You can change the whole world around.
Oftentimes it's the happy people, and like the people that you wouldn't expect, or like the strong ones that are often the ones that surprise you, which is what a lot of what he talked about. And this is completely random and not anything great, but like Dane is the first name my brother used to call me. We're not saying my birth name, but he couldn't say my birth name. And so he called me Dane for years.
You don't look like a Dane.
No.
Bonnie Violet. No.
Not then, not now, not ever. All right, here we go. Now we're getting.
Let's keep going.
I know, it's like Ren always has a good way of like taking us back up.
Down,
after bringing us down. Yes. So
I'm all depressed now. Y'all done made me sad.
I know, right? William says, we never know what someone else is struggling with. A quick hello and a smile may just be the saving grace for someone.
Exactly, William. Thank you for sharing that.
Kelly says that she was suicidal most of her life. So thankful. Sorry, I've tried to put it in. Yeah, so she says, so thankful I kept hanging on for my son. I didn't want him to go to his dad, who was worse off than me. Thankful I haven't been suicidal in years.
I'm so glad, Kelly. I'm so glad. Thank you for sharing that with us. This is we really appreciate your vulnerability, truly.
Indeed. And if folks are watching this and you're feeling some sort of way, please reach out to somebody.
Yes.
To talk to them about, you know, how you're feeling and what's going on. Here we go. Back to the angel talk now.
I don't know if I can handle any more.
The first angel. All right, here we go.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. What's the song? This is chapter 1?
It's just
shut up with this. Every chapter. Okay, thank you, Callie.
It's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut. Your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. You know the entire ocean came from my tear ducts. I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double Dutch. I guess there's some that's born lucky, there's some that's not. I tried to cut away my bitterness, hatchet job. I locked my youth inside the trunk, inside the pickup truck, then dumped that whole thing over that same bridge the night you jumped. I think about that sometimes, vividly. What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility. Only one movement to expose our fragility. I fucking miss you, and I miss myself. I miss thinking we were indestructible as hell. I miss chilling by the pier cave and kicking back with Callum, Hugo, Justin, Sega, Stevie and the fucking lads. I miss missing that. I numb myself to close the gap. I never even call them up. Distance is my plaster cast, to tell the truth. The day you jumped, my childhood jumped too. But I still can't find the anger. All I find is missing you, man, I miss you. With all my rhymes, I picture running 5 minutes quicker, I'm right on time. I picture pulling you back over the edge and then we're crying, and holding you, my brother, and telling you that it's fine. Not the way that it worked, I was late like a jerk. There's not a day where I can find a way to break from the hurt. Your body missing, so we never got to wave to the hearse. I hope you're listening, I love you, man, I miss you, absurd, fuck. Another domino, it falls. Across the way another's born. How you're supposed to raise a child and give it courage from a storm. In a world that is confusing, contradictions pave our flaws. Some will say we're only human, others judge us for our flaws. Some get born in sheets of satin, some get by in tattered clothes. Some will die before they live, that's just how the story goes. But for those of us still with us, who reside inside our hearts, tell them proudly how you feel. And for those of us who aren't, freckled angels stand strong, freckled angels live on, freckled angels climb higher, freckled angels still inspire, freckled angels won't forget you, teach me to live my life better. 13 years and still I miss you, now my wings are missing feather. Otherwise I'd come and join you, but for now I'm here on earth, stuck inside this mortal body. But for everything it's worth, made me braver, made me wiser, made me stronger, made me true, made me face the world with courage, and that's all because of you. Freckled angels laugh the hardest, and their hearts, they are the largest. With their wings, they fly the farthest. So I know you're gonna be okay. Freckled angels live the longest, and their minds, they are the strongest. Oh, their friends, they are the fondest. So I know you're gonna be okay.
Girl.
You got a fade to black, Barney?
No, I'm just like, oh.
That was probably one of the most beautiful songs I have ever heard. From the piano to the lyrics to the heartfelt message, just powerful. You know?
The one line that jumped out at me was when you die before we, or some die before we live, or something like that. I was like, wow, it's powerful. Powerful. Deanna's late to the party, but
she's
Deanna! But she's here. She's just in time for Chinchilla.
We are. Well, you're just in time for our girl Chinchilla.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, wow. I know that made for a long episode for folks, but I know some of you anticipated that. Wow. I knew it. I knew it might hit, but I didn't think it was going to hit like that. Like, damn.
Child.
Wow.
Powerful.
Kelly says, I'll be here for all the chapters.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Kelly.
Yeah, I think it definitely want to do chapter 2 next, huh?
We got no choice now.
Well,
We in it to win it.
I know, like I'm invested. Like I want I want to know. I hope
Right.
you all
Can I handle it, Carrie? You know, I'm emotional right now. I don't know.
Well, maybe it's, I don't know, because it sounded like he was going into the angels. I don't know if that's maybe what he meant by freckled angel and that was all, or if that's
beautiful. It was beautiful.
I think Freckled Angels was one of his like first albums, I believe, name of his first album, I believe.
I think Kelly was saying something about he gave his mom, Joe's mom, money when he gave her this song. What was that?
Song? In the song, Cerulean said this is the song he showed to Joe's parents when he went back to Wales last year, when he gave Joe's mom the money for the caravan. She named the van Joe.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Cerulean.
Yes. So it's hard to follow that.
I know my girl better have her Russian game on for this one, because this is going to be a tough act to follow. Can we get a witness?
Yes. Well, I know it's like, is it an act that's follow? I don't know. He's got some humor interspersed in the chapters between the hell he lived through. He said his friend was covered head to toe in freckles, which is why he named the album Freckled Angel.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Kelly.